300, 600, 1200 with a 600 straddle. This game is huge. Jungleman opens to 3000 on the button, giving Jason Koon incredible odds to call, as if facing a min raise in a non-ante game. This is about a rough estimate of what Jason Koon should be calling with, facing a $3,000 raise from Jungleman's extremely loose button. And as you can see, King 5 is a very standard call. Something important to notice is that despite facing an extremely loose button open, the big blind defense doesn't have you 3-betting ace-queen offsuit 100% of the time, because you still need to be flatting some of your stronger hands in order to protect your flatting range when you flat with hands like Jack 7 offsuit or 10-4 suited. If you call only with all of these weak hands and 3-bet a purely linear range, you're going to be too weak post-flop and going to have a lot of difficulty facing multiple barrels from aggressive opponents. Board comes King 10-3 with 2 diamonds, and this board really crushes Jungleman's range because he can have ace-king, pocket kings, pocket tens, while Jason Koon cannot. So Jason quickly checks, Jungleman down bets, and Jason Koon calls. So in the model, Jason will be checking 100% of his range, and afterwards, Jungleman will be betting 100% of his range. Now, after Jungleman bets, you can see that the response is pretty complicated. First, on a board that favors Jungleman, Jason's going to have to fold 38% of his hands, which means that he's not going to be able to meet the minimum defense frequency to prevent Jungleman from auto-profiting by betting 1/3. Notice that optimal defense has your opponent calling with hands like Queen 2 of spades, Jack 4 of spades, some combinations of Ace 8 of clubs. And if your opponent is not carefully selecting all of these combinations, it's very possible that he's going to wildly overcall or wildly overfold against you, and then really get punished on future streets as your ranges begin to tighten. The turn brings in the 6 of spades, which really should not improve any of Koon's range, so he checks, and Jungleman goes for the big, near pot-size bet. Jason thinks for a little bit, and then he goes ahead and makes the call. So far, this hand looks extremely standard, but what I was surprised to see is that on the 6 of spades, rather than checking 100% of its range, Pio actually likes to lead 32% of the time for 1/3 of the pot. Now, it's much more likely that Jason is going to be checking 100% of his range here, but I find it very interesting that with wide versus wide ranges, Pio likes to lead a seemingly innocent turn card with a mixed variety of hands. However, when we compare the EV between bets and checks, we find that actually none of these hands are superior bets. So if you simplified this street to checking your entire range, you'd be giving up insignificant amounts of EV. However, if you're a very advanced player and you're looking for spots to add in unexploitable leads that might confuse your opponent and get them to spew against you, this is probably a pretty good one. In another video, we saw where Linus takes surprisingly thin lines with neutral hands in order to confuse his opponents. And this could be an example of where you lead a turn donk into your game and get your opponents to assume that you're a terrible player. However, for the remainder of this model, we're going to assume that Jason checks his entire range here, so we're going to use subtree configuration in order to edit out a turn donk from him. Now, after Jason checks his entire range, if we give Jungleman 2 bet sizing options, either he can bet 2/3 of the pot, or he can bet close to pot, Pio always is going to prefer the larger bet size here. This is because Jungleman has the nuts advantage. If we go into Range Explorer, we can see that in his betting range, Jungleman has a bunch of sets, 2 pairs, and some overpairs. Additionally, on a king-high board, Jungleman's the only player who can have ace-king. When we look at Jason's range, we can see that in his checking range, he has significantly fewer combinations of sets and 2 pair, because those hands probably will check-raise the flop. Also, Jason should have significantly reduced combinations of ace-king and king-queen, which either 3-bet pre-flop or check-raise the flop. So on the turn, because Jungleman has so many more combinations of strong hands, he's allowed to put in the larger bet size. On this 2 diamond, 2 spade board, we can see that very, very few clubs are going to bet, as well as very, very few hearts. Jungle doesn't need to bluff often when he has hearts or clubs, but the times he does bluff those hands, he should follow through and fire them on the river when he misses. For the most part, because Jungle should still have the nut advantage on the turn, there should be very few turn check raises in Jason's range, especially facing this size, except for the rare times that he has exactly pocket 6s.
$1,000 on the turn, and now an ace rolls off on the river. $28,000 bet on the end here.
The ace on the river is a terrible card for Jason's range, so as you can see, he pretty much has to just check everything. And I've given Jungleman the option of betting large or betting small on the river. Now, obviously, he's going to go for the large sizing with pocket 3s, pocket 10s, pocket kings, ace king, ace jack, a rivered straight. But I was also really interested in seeing what hands Pio like to bet with the small sizing. You have to start by balancing the range by putting in some combinations of the nuts, but I like that Pio also balances this range by value betting these weak ace-x type hands with a 1/3 bet size, and then also firing a couple of these complete garbage bluffs with the 1/3 bet size. So I really like seeing that Pio has found a way to never check back the river with a pair of aces. Jungleman bets large, and on the river, Jason's exact combinations of king 5 looks like it's a majority fold. If Jason did want to pick combinations of king 5 offsuit to call on the river, I think the best combinations to call with involve him having the king of hearts and the 5 of clubs, or the king of clubs and 5 of hearts, because both of those hands unblock my opponent's most likely diamond and spade draws. I really don't want to have the 5 of spades, because that blocks combinations of backdoor draws like 7-5 of spades that are really going to want to bluff this river, because there's no way that they can win at showdown with 7 high. Similarly, if you were going to pick combinations of suited kings to call down with, you really want to call down when you have clubs so you can unblock the diamonds and spades, and you want to call down more when you have hearts.
I don't think I'm supposed to fold this. Just fucking believe you, man. I don't know.
What a beast.
Nice.
Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.